Hello there and welcome to In My Opinion for Opinion-Oneechanbara Origin. In this world, the undead roam everywhere and you play as Aya, a sword-wielding warrior who chops them down thanks to her father's teachings. One day her father and half-sister Saki goes missing, and while she's looking for them, an informant named Ray contacts her and she says she will help her as long as Aya continues to kill the undead. A long time passes with no leads until Aya gets a message from Saki. She then goes on to go find her half-sister. The story here is a reimagining of the first two games' story put into one. And it's for the best as I checked the original games and they barely had a plot to begin with. Some of these scenes can be a bit melodramatic, which makes them kind of funny given what Aya is wearing. And I have to say, the story itself is not amazing, but it does its job in giving you a reason to keep on going until the end. It's also a positive that none of the characters are annoying or unlikable, and they do share some banter through cutscenes and gameplay that can be entertaining. This isn't hack and slash, so you'll be punching, shooting, slicing, and dicing the undead horde. You do have a combo list, though it's pretty limited when you start the game, but as you level up by collecting orbs dropped by zombies, you unlock more combos. Timing your button inputs just right will trigger a cool combo, which not only increases the attack power and speed of your combo, but also increases the build-up speed of your ecstasy meter. The ecstasy meter starts as 1 bar, but can increase to 3 as you level up, and once 1 bar is full, you can perform a powerful move that will deal out a ton of damage and hit a ton of enemies. The other way to build up said meter is to perform a prediction, which is basically a well-timed dodge. This will also slow everything down for a quick second, making you temporarily invincible and leaving an opening for a counterattack. Another defense option is the parry, which is if you press a button just at the right time, will null an enemy attack and will also trigger 2 different types of stunts. One is yellow, which is a temp stun that throws the enemy off balance and you beat them up more easily, and one is a longer stun which increases the damage they take, and you can also trigger a special move as well. And these stunts also work on bosses. As you're chopping up enemies and spilling blood, you will notice blood filling your character icon, and once it's full, it triggers the Berserk form, in which your defense lowers but your power and attack speed increases, and when you hit a certain part in the game, you will also unlock Ecstatic form. This is the next level of Berserk and will build up as you kill in Berserk form, which you can tell by the cracks on the character icon. This form increases your attack even more, but your health does start to drain, but you can get health back as long as you're hitting something. Both of these forms are temporary, so you have to get as much as you can out of them before they wear off. And don't worry, if you can't reach a static form in time, it will leave off where it was as long as you're in the same chapter. Going by the footage, you can see Saki joins the fight, and once she does, you're free to switch characters on the fly during combat. And while you start with 1 weapon, each for the 2, eventually you do get an extra weapon for each of them, which you can easily switch on the fly as well. You may have noticed the weapon icons do turn blood red little by little, which is not a good thing since if the weapon has too much blood on it, the attack goes down. So you must clean it off, and you can wipe off a little mid-combo or you can completely clean it off when you stop swinging. The gameplay itself is very smooth, fast, and while the grunt AI is rather brain dead, it doesn't really take away from the enjoyment of spilling all this blood. I think most of the fun comes from seeing how many enemies you can kill at once and keeping your combo going, all while looking as stylish as possible. The boss AI is a bit better than the usual enemy as they react much faster and hit a tiny bit harder. There's also the added fun of trying to parry their attacks to stun them and cause more damage. Also, when it comes to parrying or even dodging, the game does a great job at giving you a visual clue of when to time it, and even though you miss a few times, it never felt impossible. I will say though that the special attacks you can pull off when the enemy is stunned sometimes did not want to come out for some reason, but it never happened in the same amount. Switching between Aya and Saki never slows down the combat as it's done with relative ease, and you can keep going with your combos. Even the weapon switching keeps up the pace. I do like when you switch out, the game regenerates some of the character's health, and making them set out doesn't waste your berserk or the static meter. I do find it odd that the partner AI doesn't do much in terms of damage, as they seem to just stun enemies and never kill them. The 4 weapons themselves do feel different from one another with different animations to go along with them. So you will find one you prefer, and while I liked all the weapons, my personal favorite was using Saki's fist. There's also an option to make a bar show up after each attack, which will show you when to press the attack to trigger a cool combo, which I suggest you turn on as it's super helpful, and without it, at least for me, I could never hit the button right, which resulted in the gameplay feeling a little bit slower. Compared to Opinion-Oneechanbara Z2 Chaos, there are less options in combat, so if you have yet to play any of these games, I would start with Origins. This is not a slight against Origins as it's nowhere near a bad game, and the combat is still very fun. Also, the lock on here like Z2 can be a bit iffy at times, but it never ruined the game. I also liked how the game was paced as each chapter is just the right length, so you never get the feeling of man this is sure getting dull, as the game always gets you to the next area pretty quickly. Hell, some of the chapters themselves are just a boss fight, and if you do get dead or maybe want to stop during a chapter, there are frequent checkpoints. The orbs I mentioned before also count as cash, which can be spent in the shop that has items that can be consumed to regain health or even temporarily buff your attack. Though some of these consumables can be found laying around the chapters and stuff like boxes and barrels. Though if you ever really need these, you can access the shop pretty much whenever. There are also rings you can get from the shop, and equipping them can give you permanent buffs like increased attack, faster blood meter gain, increased amount of money and XP you can earn, and more, though you can only equip 3 at a time per character. While you're going through the game, you can complete little quests, which are things like parry X amount of times, get a V rank at the end of a chapter X amount of times, defeat X amount of enemies while in static form, and so forth. The good thing is the game lets you know what's the amount of times you gotta do it, and even shows you a bar of your progress, and there's 3 different levels to the bar, each with their own reward. And if you complete one bar, the game will tell you while in gameplay, but not in an intrusive way. The rewards are things like music and illustrations you can check out in the gallery, and with the music you can set up what tracks you want to play during certain situations like normal combat and boss encounters. Another reward that's pretty helpful is the rings I mentioned before, as some of these need to be unlocked this way to buy in the store. The good thing is most of these rings are attached to getting to only level 1 of the quest, so you'll most likely get these just by playing, and if you're curious what reward is in what quest, you can easily check. After you beat the game, you unlock infinite survival in the bonus mission section, which is 100 plus levels of you fighting grunts and bosses. What's extremely helpful about this is when you fight here, you gain money and experience, which will have you shooting up levels pretty damn fast, which is needed if you want to take on the harder difficulties you unlock for the game. Hell, if you just want to do a few levels, you can stop and the game still gives you your experience and money, which is fucking awesome. You do get a nice little reward if you reach floor 101 in survival, which is the gun-wielding character Ray, who is pretty strong once she fills up her blood gun. Another plus is the game creates a starting point once you reach level 51, so you don't have to do it in one go. The game also has a practice menu in which you can mess around with your characters against whatever enemies and settings you put. There is not much else to do in the base game. I'm mentioning base since there is DLC, and this DLC feels like something that should have been in the base game. The DLC's outfits, which is what I'm wearing in this footage, and character missions which take place during certain points of the story that even contain some voice dialogue. So it's missions where we see what Aya and her father was up to, or Saki being slowly brainwashed. And I feel like it's pretty crappy to keep these 2 things behind the paywall when the game before it, Z2, had them. I know Z2 had some paid outfits, but at least had some unlockable ones, while this game has none. And while Z2 didn't have missions that took place in certain parts of the story and have voice dialogue in it, at the end of the day, it still had missions. Now I have the DLC because I bought the deluxe edition on sale, and if you're thinking of getting it, ask yourself if you want a little more story bits, and if you like the outfits. I personally like the DLC outfits as I use them over the base ones, but that's not to say the base ones are bad. You also unlock Ray right away instead of doing survival, so there's that to consider as well. The game goes for a cel-shaded style, which looks really nice. I'm actually happy they went for this route since Z2 has CG graphics which made the characters look like creepy dolls, and here they actually look human. The game is very vibrant and colorful, with the color red being a key color, with blood flying everywhere including on your body and the screen, which is actually a very neat effect. There's actually a ton of effects going on, be it a glow when you're doing a cool attack to a bubble when you score a parry, and all of these do not get in the way of gameplay and help enhance the visuals. Also like how the zombies tend to slowly fall apart as you're attacking them, so you see plenty of missing limbs while playing. And when it comes to bosses, they even add a cool little killing blow when you take them out. The character models look good and the designs ain't bad either, such as the zombie sisters who get a better look over their original. If you're wondering if the game is fan service heavy going by Aya's outfit, well it's not, since besides her outfit and another, and a panty shot here and there, it's pretty light on it. I personally have no problems with this type of stuff, but I thought it's best to let you know what you're getting here. The game does have an English dub and the cast performs well, and there is a Japanese voice track if you want that instead. However, there's one negative, and that's with the audio itself, not the voices, as there are moments in the game where it does a random, weird, obvious cutoff, and I thought it was my headset at first, but nope, it happened without it as well. It doesn't ruin the whole game, but it can take you aback a bit. The camera for the game works surprisingly well with how fast it is and with all the action going on screen. And speaking of action, the frame rate to the game never really hiccuped with only very rare moments. And besides the audio cutoffs I mentioned, there were no other tech issues.
A little, right?
Sure you would. I mean, it's not like anybody else dresses like
Shut
this.
it. You're looking for your father, yeah? Let me give you a hand.
Give us a hand? Because of you, we just lost sight of him.
The AI may be dumb, and I do have some gripes with the DLC, but I can still say I had fun killing all these zombies. The gameplay is smooth and the visuals are a step up from the last game, so much so that I hope it doesn't go back to how it looked before. I got through the game in about 5 hours, and replayability comes in the form of doing survival to unlock Ray and taking on the harder difficulties. Besides that, there's not much else to do in the game. If you play Z2, I would still recommend this game because even though Origins is a little less meaty, it's still enjoyable. And if you never touch any of these games and are just looking for a simple and fun hack and slash, then this is not a bad option. I hope you enjoy my thoughts on this game, and for gamer's sake, keep gaming.